Is it wrong to try to pick up girls with your sword art? Hello everybody and welcome to another countdown of the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan. This for the week of December 17th to the 23rd of 2018. I'm Justus R. Stone and this channel is completely dedicated to light novels, so if you love light novels or maybe you're just starting to get into them, you should consider subscribing. So the top 10 this week is filled with titles that even us English fans are probably going to be familiar with most of them. A lot of them we actually do have licensed, and even the ones that we don't, they come from source material that we're at least a little bit familiar with. So let's get right into it, and you know, starting off at number 10 is probably the most unknown title of the whole bunch of them. So at number 10, with 7,123 copies sold, Volume 6 of Souzai Saishuka no Isekai Ryokouki, or, as it's been roughly translated into English, Material Collectors Another World Travelers. We do not have this licensed in English. We don't have the manga licensed in English. This one I just had to scratch my head. So the one sort of synopsis that goes around on most of the sites I could find about this was, Takeru Kamishiro is an ordinary middle-aged salaryman who was chosen by God to be reincarnated into a fantasy world in the body of a handsome young man in his prime. That's it. That's all they said. The only addition I saw to that was with a big penis. Yes, they apparently saw fit to include reference to his size of his manhood in this whole thing. I don't know. I guess apparently it's kind of a joke that sort of, I was going to say pops up, but maybe that's the wrong way to put it. I guess it's a gag. It's a gag. It's not legitimately part of the story. So I was kind of like, well, I'm going to go to Google and sort of see what it says about the first volume. And apparently, I guess this is a grand prize winner of the Alpha Police Fantasy Novel Grand Prize. It's Reader Award double winning work. So I guess it was well regarded by this competition. And basically, it is a young man who is, of course, it's an isekai, so he goes to another world. But what he got was he got a cheat ability, which was like a survey or like a scan or appraisal type ability. And so because of that, he's able to get a bunch of rare materials, which then of course he becomes famous for, that he can find these rare materials and stuff. So he becomes a material harvester. So I guess basically this is kind of the whole gist of this thing, is that it's an isekai, and the cheat ability this particular character has is that he can find really rare materials or identify really rare materials, and so hence the title, which is Material Collector, right? So yeah, I mean, and he just happens to have a really big penis. I don't know, man. Light novels. Although what was funny though is that I actually saw someone in the comments of one of the, I think it was basically manga, because there is some scanlations, I believe, of the manga. One of the things I saw was they were like, what's really funny is that everybody makes a thing about the fact that, you know, he's like, oh, look at the size of that thing. But there's like really no issue in the book at all. Like it's a really wholesome, apparently, outside of that, which, I don't know, it seems kind of like, I don't know how to see that, whether I see that as a missed opportunity or what. But in any case, this one's at number 10. At number 9, with 7,324 copies sold, it's the novelization of the Dragon Ball Super Brolly film. This one, of course, on the list last week. We do have the manga of Dragon Ball licensed and being released in English by Viz. Of course, the anime of this one is streaming on Crunchyroll. I don't know that has somebody licensed the movie yet, Brolly? I'm pretty sure it's been announced. Probably it's been announced. Admittedly, I'm not a big Dragon Ball guy, so I don't keep up as much on that, but they've licensed like everything Dragon Ball. It's got to be coming out. In any case, the film apparently takes place after the Universe Survival Saga, which was depicted in Dragon Ball Super. So if you've been following that story, or that anime, that's where this basically fits in to the whole storyline. And involves a Saiyan called Brolly. And that it just kind of deals with the history of him and of Goku and Vegeta and their whole race. And, you know, the typical thing, Dragon Ball. It's Dragon Ball, come on. You guys, even if you don't watch Dragon Ball, you probably already know what it's like. And actually what I found really funny was somebody, when I was on the list last week, they're like, how'd they even write a novel where basically it's just guys like punching each other for like half of the thing? And I said what was actually, and made me laugh, because when we talked about this getting a novelization on the Light Novel podcast, we were like, how much you want to bet it's like there's 3 pages of just some guy as he's leveling up just going, oh, and it's just like a big like, oh, across like 3 pages. I don't know. I mean, part of me would actually be kind of disappointed if it doesn't have at least that once. I'm not saying it's something that should happen a lot in the book. Maybe once, but yeah, I mean, Dragon Ball, it's going to be popular. This one, like I said, it's the novelization of the film. And yeah, I don't know. I can't say that I can see this getting licensed for English release. I don't think they'll really bother. I'm positive they've licensed or will license the film, but that's probably it. At number 8, with 8,542 copies sold, Volume 15 of Isekai wa Smart Phone to Tomo ni, or as we have it in English, In Another World with My Smartphone. This one is licensed for English release by J-Novel Club. Volume 12 is coming out January 26th. And of course there was a 12-episode anime which streamed on Crunchyroll and covered volumes 1 to 3 of the light novel series. After a freak accident involving some lightning winds up zapping him dead, 15-year-old Mochizuki Toya wakes up to find himself face to face with God. I am afraid to say that I have made a bit of a blunder, laments the old coot. But all is not lost. God says that he can reincarnate Toya into a world of fantasy, and as a bonus, he gets to bring his smartphone along. So begins Toya's adventure in a new, anachronistic, pseudo-medieval world. Friends, laughs, tears, inexplicable deus ex machina. He sets off on a journey full of wonder as he absent-mindedly travels from place to place, following whatever goal catches his fancy. The curtains lift on an epic tale of swords, sorcery, and smartphone apps. So this series, I read the first 2 volumes of this series, and I have to admit there is a part of me that is very disappointed in myself that I haven't kept up with it, because it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. It is the light novel series that, in your mind, you just imagine the author is just like, I feel like writing a mecha story. How can I make that fit? Okay, fine, whatever. We'll make a mecha story. Like, it's just like a kitchen sink kind of light novel series, but at the same time, because it never really tries to be anything more, like it doesn't try to be pretentious or, you know, uppity or anything like that. It's just like, you know what, this is just, we're just going to run around, have fun, and do ridiculous things. And, you know, the first 2 volumes really worked for me in that regard, because I just kind of got that whole vibe through the whole thing that it was like, yep, this is going to be absurd. Yep, we're going to do just about anything I feel like as an author. And yeah, you're going to either read it or not. So have a good time. See you later. And in a way, I resonated with that honesty. And as I said, I'm just kind of sad that I haven't kept up with it to keep up with the absolute insanity of the whole series. But, well, maybe I'll catch up on a couple of volumes at least this year. At number 7, with 9,592 copies sold, Volume 16 of Only Sense Online. We do not have a light novel license for this one, nor do we have a license for the manga, and, well, there's been no anime. Yoon is a novice MMO player who equipped only unpopular skills labeled as garbage. However, soon after the official launch of the game, the NPC stopped to sell recovery potions. Everyone finally started to notice the importance of support magic and items. And that spells trouble for Yoon as well as all the support-based players. They received orders for recovery potions from endless floods of players en masse. Some more aggressive players even go as far as forcing the support players to be their personal craftsmen. In order to prevent this from going out of hand, all the support players grouped together to form a community to keep things in order. So to me, I mean, when I first heard this, and I mean, this one's been on the list lots, of course. I mean, it's a long-running series, but when I first heard about this one, I was like, so it's about, like, them forming a craftsman union in an MMO? Like, that's what it sounds like to me. I've heard, obviously, that this is a bit of a comedy. I guess somebody was saying that there is a little bit of seriousness to it, but that overall it's generally speaking a comedy. And I don't know much more about it other than that. I really need to take some more extensive notes on this one, because like I said, it just keeps showing up again and again in the list. So if you know more about the series and you have some thoughts on it, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. At number 6, with 11,396 copies sold, volume number 9 of Goblin Slayer. This one, of course, licensed for English release by Yen On. They're going to be releasing volume 6 on January 22nd. There is a 12-episode anime which streamed on Crunchyroll, and it covered volumes 1 to 2 with at least some of a short story from volume number 4. A young priestess has formed her first adventuring party, but almost immediately they find themselves in distress. It's the Goblin Slayer who comes to their rescue, a man who's dedicated his life to the extermination of all goblins by any means necessary. And when rumors of his feats begin to circulate, there's no telling who might come calling next. This one, really, if you have been looking for a light novel that is, well, I mean, basically it's a D&D campaign. This one's a great place to start. It very, very heavily, plays up that whole dungeon diving campaign type storyline. And I personally feel it works. I'm entertained by it. I'm entertained by the different characters and their different personalities and how they kind of work together, and how Goblin Slayer is a barely functional human being. That kind of stuff I find entertaining. Obviously the anime kicked up a little bit of a hornet's nest with its first episode, which did involve goblin rape. And, at the same time I was kind of like, well, I've been talking about this series for a long time and told people that it had this kind of stuff. And, I was kind of disappointed that people went into it and had absolutely no idea. But then at the same time, there were so many anime reviewers that got on the boat and started talking about this one that seemed to have no idea that it was actually a light novel series, and didn't address the fact that the light novel was nowhere near as graphic as the anime, or let alone the manga, which is even more graphic than the anime. It was disappointing to me that was kind of ignored, because granted, Goblin Slayer is not going to be for everybody. Not everybody wants to read, essentially a fleshed out D&D campaign. Not everybody likes that kind of thing. Not everybody likes a book that, as much as it has some comedy and stuff between the characters, also has some slightly heavier topics and stuff like that. I mean, not everybody's going to be into it, and that's totally cool, but I just kind of wished that conversation had happened a bit more about how the fact that, there are other components to this series, and it was kind of, the source material did handle this stuff a little bit differently and with a little less heavy-handed shock value as what the anime and manga have. But, oh well, anyway, I'm doing that here, and I mean, we talked at length about this during a podcast, so I mean, I shouldn't really have to rehash all of it, but, well, I just felt like saying it, because here we are, and honestly, there's a new series coming out this spring called The Rising of the Shield Hero, which I have reviewed on this channel, and it's kicking up a whole other kind of hornet's nest. So, I don't know. One day we'll get some light novels adapted that won't cause the community to lose their mind in a negative way. Oh yeah, we did that last season with Rascal does not dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. If only we can get that in English. At number 5, with 14,761 copies sold, Volume 11 of Imoto Sairabai, or A Sister's All You Need. We do have this license for English release by Yen On. They're releasing Volume 3 January 22nd. There was a 12-episode anime, which is on Crunchyroll, and it covered Volumes 1 to 3 with some material from Volume number 4. Itsuki Hashima is a novelist who's hopelessly enamored with the idea of little sisters, and is constantly surrounded by colorful characters. A world-class genius and love guru whose beauty almost seems a waste on her, a girl who's constantly troubled by her friendships, love interests, and can't even find refuge in her dreams. A ridiculously talented illustrator, each of them have as many problems and worries as the next, and they never have a dull day together as they play games, travel, and work together. This series, I read the first volume. I actually have to pick up the second volume because the first book opens up with probably one of the most heavy-handed little sister troll scenes that I can imagine in recent memory. And it's immediately like it's either going to make you throw the book or just kind of question your sanity in continuing with it. But the book, because the book mainly focuses on the characters, it is more of a slice of life thing. And even characters in that book acknowledge that what this guy writes in terms of little sisters is just too much, too extreme, and has no place on bookshelves anywhere. Kind of made me feel a little bit more at ease in terms of reading the rest of the book. I kind of found that it was one of those books, though, that there were all these little moments that would come through. Like, obviously, it is not biographical. I do not think that light novelists live the kind of life that you have depicted in this book. But there were some nuggets of truth in there in terms of, like, the whole creative process and self-doubt and, you know, respect/jealousy of someone in your same field. For those parts of it, I was kind of like, you know, I kind of like this. It is kind of a little bit more self-aware than I'm giving it credit for. So for that reason, I will pick up Volume 2 at some point in the next couple of months and check it out. I think at one point we're even going to talk about this probably on the Light Novel podcast, just because, man, we just got to talk about that opening scene. We just have to, because, wow. Wow. I can't even imagine what an actual anime that was like that would be like, and I don't know if I ever want to be honest. Ooh. At number 4, with 17,553 copies sold, Volume 9 of Arifureta Shokugyo Desaikai Saikyo, or as we have it in English, Arifureta From Commonplace to World's Strongest. This is licensed for English release by J-Novel Club. They released Volume 8 on October 28th, 2018, so they've been 100% caught up with this series, I guess just waiting for this volume to come out, so you can probably expect it from J-Novel Club in the next couple months. They're usually pretty quick to turn those around. Now, it is being printed by 7 Seas. They're printing the translation that J-Novel Club is putting out. And 7 Seas, the Volume 4 in print came out on December 18th of 2018. So they're about halfway through with the print, and they're all caught up with the ebook format. There's also a manga, which 7 Seas is releasing in English, and there is an anime that has been announced that is set to begin airing in July of 2019. Now this one, 17-year-old Hajime Nagumo is your average everyday otaku. However, his simple life of pulling all-nighters and sleeping in school is suddenly turned upside down when he, along with the rest of his class, is summoned to a fantasy world. They're treated like heroes and tasked with the duty of saving the human race from utter extinction. But what should have been any otaku's wet dream quickly turns into Hajime's nightmare. While the rest of his class are blessed with godlike powers, Hajime's job, Synergist, only has a single transmutation skill. Ridiculed and bullied by his classmates for being weak, he soon finds himself in despair. Will he be able to survive in this dangerous world of monsters and demons with only a glorified blacksmith's level of strength? And of course, what's really funny is that that description only applies to about the first, like, 20% or so of the novel. Because Hajime's life takes a very sudden turn. And, not necessarily in a... Well, I mean, I don't know. Is it in a good way? I mean, I guess we could argue that it turns out better for him than how it was going, but it gets pretty ugly in order for him to get to the better part of his existence. This one's really like, man, a testosterone-fueled, like, OP revenge type fantasy series, harem series. You know, I read the first 3 volumes, and again, it's a series that I've said to myself I wouldn't mind picking up more of, mainly because it's just one of those books where, like, you have a main character who, man, it's not even like he's just out for one person. Like, this guy's out, like, to take on the whole world, gods included. And I mean, man, that takes some serious gumption. And then, you know what, I kind of like the setup of the book, the whole, like, having to conquer different labyrinths and dungeons, and again, like, you know, it has that slight dungeon dive aspect to it. The couple of labyrinths that were featured in the first 3 books were quite different from one another and presented all different challenges, which I thought was a lot of fun. So yeah, you know what, it's definitely, again, it's not one of those series that's going to be for everybody. You know, like I said, it is very much a on steroids kind of OP type book, but in a way, that kind of ridiculous level of it makes it kind of more enjoyable. At number 3, with 18,466 copies sold, Volume 2 of Shin High School DxD. We do not have an English license for these light novels or for the parent series, which was just High School DxD. The manga is licensed for English release by Yen Press. They released Volume 10 in December. There is an anime adaptation, which has like 36 episodes, 4 OVAs, which is licensed in North America by Funimation. And the anime has covered volumes 1 to 7 and part of 8. Although there is a 4th season, which I guess just finished. That was High School DxD Hero. That began airing April of 2018, so it didn't just finish. It finished last season. But in any case, I don't know how many volumes it covered. If you do know, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be very interested in knowing that. This one focuses on main character Issei, who is a, you know, horn dog type high schooler, and he finally gets asked out on a date by a cute girl, and he's all excited, and then she turns out to be, like, not exactly just a normal girl, and she kills Issei. But, of course, this being a light novel, Issei doesn't die. Instead, he is resurrected by one of his senpais, who turns out to be a demon, or a devil, and he becomes one of her servants. And hilarity ensues. Well, hilarity and opai ensue. Yeah, this is one of those series that, yeah, it's pretty eishi, and it gets kind of wild. I mean, it involves basically every pantheon of god, deity that you can think of, as well as all sorts of mythological monsters and demons, and yeah, the whole 9 yards, man. Like, it's, yeah. And apparently, I guess what it is that this is like the end of High School DxD, and so basically, High School DxD up until its final volume, this is just a continuation of that. It's just, apparently I was reading an interview, thanks to, oh my gosh, I can't remember who sent me the link, but they sent me a link for the afterword that had been translated of Shin High School DxD Volume 1, and I was reading it, and so basically it sounds like the author just wanted to restart the numbering for the very final arc, but since that didn't happen, this is now the last part of the last arc, and I guess he wanted to kind of separate it from the main series, just to kind of, you know, highlight the fact that it's different, it's coming to the end and everything, and so that's why this got renumbered. And that was really it, apparently. Doesn't seem to be anything really all that crazy in terms of, like, some people were like, oh, it's going to be more ecchi, or oh, it's going to be more serious, or no, it's really just the author thinking, like, we've already put out over 20 volumes in the main series, and I kind of want to renumber start renumbering and sort of separate the last arc to kind of highlight the fact that it's special, and that seems to be it. So I guess that's the mystery of that whole thing solved. So just consider this like a continuation of High School DxD, because really, that's what it is. At number 2, with 24,528 copies sold, Volume 21 of Sword Art Online. Of course, this one's licensed for English release by Yen On. They released Volume 15 December 18th of 2018. There is currently the Alicization arc anime airing on Crunchyroll. This is the first new volume in the main Sword Art series since September of 2017. This is also the first new material in the Sword Art main series that has been published since the web novel ended back in 2008. So this is the first time that this is brand new Sword Art material beyond what the web novel covered. So there was so many people wondering just where he was going to go with this and everything else, and it sounds like it's going to be a very big, long arc, at least as long as Alicization, and like, it sounds pretty wild. It sounds kind of like, now I don't want to spoil anything overall, but it just kind of sounds like he's kind of making it so that all the different worlds from this that were developed from the seed are kind of collapsing in on each other. That's kind of what it sounds like. Yeah, I don't really want to get much deeper into that because I don't want to really spoil it. Not only not spoil it for you, but not for myself either, because eventually we're going to get there. In terms of the story, I mean, it's Sword Art Online, man. Who doesn't know what Sword Art Online is anymore? I mean, I talk about this all the time when I'm doing these top 10s, and every time I talk about it, I feel kind of stupid because I'm like, really? Who doesn't know what Sword Art is anymore? I mean, really, Sword Art Online starts off with, of course, the famous game of death, 10,000 players, trapped in a VR MMO. They gotta beat the game, and if you die in the game, you die for real. It's that simple, but really, that's like the first book or so of the series, and this is now volume 21, so you can tell, obviously, lots of stuff happens beyond that. I mean, essentially, it's just the main characters getting involved in these different virtual worlds for different reasons. Some of them sometimes because they're doing a favor for the Japanese government as like a side job, sometimes to, you know, rescue their girlfriends, and sometimes because their brain has to repair itself because they got poisoned. That's a long story, but anyway. In any case, that's the whole gist of Sword Art Online, which, again, I'm pretty sure almost everybody watching this video probably knows. Finally, at number 1, with 39,299 copies sold, Volume 14 of, I'm not even gonna bother, Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? I tried the Japanese last week and it went horribly wrong, and probably always will, because this old dog I just can't seem to learn a new trick about pronouncing Japanese properly. I try, I really do try. This one, of course, licensed for English release by Yen On. They have released Volume 12 to date. Volume 13 is set to come out March of 2019, so we're really not that far behind the Japanese releases. There is a 13-episode anime series on Crunchyroll, which covered Volumes 1 to 5. Now this one, of course, it is set in a fantasy world in the city of Orario, which is set atop a dungeon that spews monsters, and when you kill these monsters, they often give drop items which society has used as part of their goods and items. You know, they use the crystals to power things, they craft items from some of these drop items. And so, of course, a whole industry has grown up around this city of adventurers who go into the dungeon to hunt monsters. And the main series focuses on one of these adventurers who is brand new to the whole thing, and his name is Bel Crenel. And he is given a blessing by a goddess named Hestia, and which enables him basically to excel beyond the abilities of a regular human being, and allows him to go into the dungeon, and it follows his adventures, basically, is what it kind of boils down to. It's one of my favorite series. In fact, I just did my countdown of my top series of 2018. The 2 volumes that I read of Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, or easier to say Donmachi, actually, they were 2 of the best volumes I've read in this series so far, so it topped out at number 1 on my top of 2018. And like I said, just mainly because the 2 volumes I read were really phenomenal in terms of their action and the character development and everything else. That's the one thing about this series that I have really enjoyed is its development of Belle as a character. And I talked a little bit last week about how I see this series and why I see it as a little different than just your typical OP power fantasy type series. Mainly just in that it really makes its main character suffer and challenges him in ways that a lot of other OP type series really fail to do. You know, you never really feel like the character is in a lot of distress or that he could really epically fail, but in Belle's case, like, sometimes he does lose, and sometimes, well, oftentimes he does suffer. So it does make the series feel quite a bit different than, you know, as Belle becomes stronger, you feel like he's earning it and that he's owning it, as opposed to it was just some kind of cheat, or that, you know, everything is really easy for him. I guess that's sort of where it separates from some of the other sort of OP type light novels that we have out there. In any case, it's a series that I really, really enjoy, which I've probably made pretty apparent by now. But again, you know what? It is a pure fantasy series, and, you know, that's not going to be for everybody, but definitely it's kind of up my alley. This week, I want to say a special thanks to Mitchell Von Region, Ola OJ the Bull, Yun, and Renzaz, and all the rest of my supporters on Patreon for their continued support, allowing me to buy books for this channel to do my reviews, as well as paying for additional hosting for the Light Novel Podcast so that it can be seen as many people as possible, and just generally allowing me to upgrade equipment and, well, pay off the debt of upgrading equipment, and just generally allowing me to make this channel better. And I'm hoping not only to do far more here on this channel during 2019, but just to do some really special and unique things for my patrons, because I really feel like I owe them a lot, and I really want to give them value for their support. So those are your top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan for December 17th to the 23rd of 2018. Thanks so much for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.